introduction, but then we'll...
So I'm Martin Bork. I'm the Executive Director here at the Ecology Center. My role is basically putting out fires and raising money and dealing with other people's problems.
Wow.
I also get to do strategic thinking and leadership for the organization and a lot of external relations. So my job is it's varied. We have two offices. We have our recycling operations office, which is at 2nd and Gilman, and that's trucks and drivers and bottles and cans and nuts and bolts and grease and diesel and biodiesel and sort of all things recycling, carts and cans and all of that. And then over here we have this public resource center and retail store. And then we off-site we have 4 farmers markets, and we have a demonstration house, the Berkeley Eco House. And then we have 3 produce stands. So there's a lot going on outside of this space as well. The idea of this Ecology Center was that, founded in the run-up to the first Earth Day, is that every community should have a place where people can come together, get educated, get connected, find the information and contacts that they need to get their next thing going, whether that's a personal project that they have in their home or whether it's starting some new community-based thing. And that's exactly how the curbside recycling program got started. That's how our farmers markets got started. So a lot of very hands-on community-based support work that we do out of this space that has helped to spawn all these other things. So we think of ourselves as a seedbed organization that people bring their ideas and plant the seeds, and then we help with water and care, and hopefully they grow and bloom and take off on their own. In terms of the kind of spectrum of jobs that exist, it's a really wide range of things. And, if you look at our workers' comp list, that's a good way to see what kinds of jobs people have. So we have some very high-risk jobs, which are the recycling, actual collection jobs and sorting jobs. We have jobs that are out in the field setting up the farmers markets are actually classified as carnival workers, or carnies. Also fairly high on the workers' comp rating. Then we have retail, which is not an office job, and so it has more physical activity in that. And then we have clerical, which includes organizing classes and events and doing advocacy work and communications and education, as well as all the administrative HR sort of back end.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, Sheila, tell us a little bit about your work.
I work with the executive director of an organization called Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition. We basically make high-tech companies accountable. Right now, most people don't really associate pollution with high-tech industry because your computer, when you use it, or your TV looks so clean and nice and pristine and doesn't emit nothing, or and just gives you nice positive feedback and get your work done. But it has a serious environmental footprint. And most of the companies operate overseas, but they initially operated in San Jose, and there's a serious legacy of pollution there. There's 29 Superfund sites that were established 30 years ago and that are still being cleaned up. So as a result of the early development of high-tech companies like IBM and HP and a lot of the other brand names that you know. So these companies have moved overseas and they're still doing a lot of pollution, and it's not just when they make computers, but it's throughout their life cycle. Workers are exposed to hazardous materials when they manufacture the computers, and then at the end of life, I don't know if you've seen some of our exposés of other organizations like Greenpeace or Basel Action Network. I don't know even some of the stuff that the GAIA has done, but your electronic products are basically dumped overseas where some of the poorest people in the world actually smash your computer and try to recover the valuable component parts of boredom, or do really dangerous activities to try to get the very little value out of the products, or formal products, or waste, like gold or solar, etc. So what we do is we try to make these companies accountable through extended producer responsibility. We want them to recycle, as well as trying to get them to reduce the toxics and to protect workers. Lately, we've been working on solar, which basically is kind of another iteration, believe it or not, of electronics. A lot of the same technological processes that you use to make a computer, you also use to make a solar panel. So we thought this is an industry that we really want to succeed, and we don't want them to follow the same path as the electronic industry, and they're just developing. So how do we use all that we learned in the last 30 years with the electronics industry in terms of getting them to clean up after themselves and to have sustainable practices? How do we apply it to the early development of the solar industry so they incorporate these processes as they grow? And so we've gone through a lot of changes as an organization over the past probably 10 years. I've been the executive director about the last 6 years. And of course, trying to move from being really reactive in terms of just running campaigns against the electronic companies to being proactive and trying to move the solar industry and doing it in a way that we're really not damaging the solar industry, because we do want them to succeed, has been a really big challenge. So over the last couple of years, in combination of us changing some of the direction of our programs as well as the overall economy, we've actually scaled back some of scaled back significantly our overall staffing. So now we have about 4 staff, or let's say 3 staff and maybe 1 half-time staff person, 3.5 people. And we have always had a staff on average about maybe 5 or 6 people. 7 is kind of a high end, and then we had a whole bunch of other programs that might have gotten up to 12 or 14. But I think we should probably function with about 6, but we're actually down to about 3. So we are depending a lot on volunteering now. We have probably about 6 volunteers that are working with us, and I don't know if I should stop here.
Yeah, because that's a topic that I think is completely relevant to like the 3rd or the 4th question. So
Okay.
put a pin in that part of it. That's a good jumping off place for that topic. And then Monica.
Great. So I'm Monica Wilson. I'm with a group called GAIA. It's the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives. And we're based in Berkeley, up on University Avenue. Well, I shouldn't say we're based. Let me take a step back. We're a global alliance. We've actually got offices in a number of different countries. Our US and Canada office is in Berkeley. But we also have offices in the Philippines, in India, in Chile, in Spain. I'm forgetting. We don't have anybody in Africa, unfortunately. We need staff people. And then also in Mexico. And then we have members in 92 countries who are working on all sorts of different issues related to waste. So many of them work on fighting garbage incinerators, which are very, very polluting ways to deal with waste. Many of them are working on fighting landfills. Many are working on moving towards zero waste, through recycling, through composting, through changing the way products are made, through changing the way that producers are responsible for products, like Sheila was talking about. So our members around the world are working on many of these issues, and we're an alliance, a place for these organizations and individuals to come together and share their information and collaborate. So although we have over 600 member organizations around the world, we have a staff of about 16 in those different offices that I mentioned. And in our US and Canada program, which is a staff of 2, that's focused only on US and Canada issues, we work a lot on community support. We support a lot of communities who are fighting new incinerator proposals across the US and across Canada, and also supporting those groups as they push for zero waste programs in their own communities. So looking to, often networking them with other people who are further ahead in zero waste, connecting people together to learn from each other, looking at models, like in many that are in the Bay Area, of places that have done a lot to move cities towards less waste, right? To reduce the amount of waste that we make, period. And then we also, through the last few years, have done more work on the to expose the number of jobs that are created through recycling and reuse and composting. And this is not news to anybody who's been in the industry. You know, a lot of people who've worked on recycling for a long time have been pointing to the number of jobs that you create through recycling compared to landfilling or burning waste. It's much more labor intensive, and that's a good thing when, especially in an economy that we're in right now, where we need new jobs. So, so we've really been focusing on that, and it's been something that's been very useful to our members and the communities that we work with, because it sort of helped build up the tools that they have to show when they're facing city council and they have a decision before them: are we going to build a new incinerator, or are we going to invest in recycling? There's more. We support them in getting the information to show that there's job creation that can be made, that local development that comes out of that investment in recycling if you make the right choice. And whereas if you invest in a landfill or an incinerator, you're going to spend a lot of money, create hardly any jobs, and get stuck in that situation where you've invested in a big capital thing, but you don't have a lot of jobs created. So in jobs in general is something that we've been working a lot on, and these are different types of jobs in the collection, recycling and reuse and composting, but also in pointing out that in manufacturing using recycled content, there's a great deal more jobs to be made. So in the U.S. economy, that there's a lot of potential for us to increase the amount of jobs in a large scale. So that's another area of advocacy that we've been doing a lot of work on in the U.S. and in Canada as well. And a lot of our members too, and allies, there's a number of groups who work on this. And it's really exciting because there's so much potential to grow this sector in terms of increasing recycling, increasing composting, increasing the amount of reuse that happens, and reducing a lot of the disposable stuff, replacing that with repairable, durable materials. There's a lot of things that can be done in our economy to change and reduce the waste that we create. And so we see that as a huge opportunity. And the communities that are part of our network see that as a huge opportunity too. So let's see, I touched on that. So most of the work that we do in our program, as I said, is either around this jobs advocacy or around supporting communities who are fighting these really terrible proposals.